Welcome to the Yo Podcast, an interview series where we spotlight leading designers, developers, and makers. I'm your host, Rob Hope, and today we have Grace Walker, an independent web designer, developer, and course creator. For years, she has been delivering high-quality websites to her clients and has earned herself a reputation as an S-tier freelancer in the Webflow community. Today, we delve into her fast-forward freelance course, the tech stack behind it, the transparency behind her Twitter annual reports, and we get creative with a fun case study on how Grace would execute a local deli website redesign from concept to deployment. Yo, Grace, welcome to the Yo Podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Cool. So I'm trying to dig up the dirt on Calgary, Alberta. And I must admit, I couldn't find much. So it's the sunniest place in Canada, 7,000 hectares of park, 700 Ks of bike lanes, and Forbes once rated it the cleanest city in the world. How difficult is it to travel? Like, why would you leave?
I love Calgary. And okay, so this is something that when I was younger, I struggled with a lot because I think a lot of the advice that I got when I was in university and like first jobs was like, oh my gosh, you should move to California, you should get a job in tech, whatever. But I love Calgary. Like, it's actually just a wonderful city. The parks, the pathways that you mentioned, like we can do full city loops that are like 80 kilometers, 100 kilometers without ever going on roads because there's just this like continual path system throughout the city. So in terms of like quality of life, Calgary is amazing. We're an hour from the mountains. Like everything is wonderful here. It's not like a big like US metropolis, obviously, but I think it's pretty stellar.
They're saying the same size as New York, but 10% of New York's population.
Yeah, there's parks. I think Calgary has one of the largest parks within a city in North America, and there's a couple of them. There's like 2 parks within the city that you can probably see from space. They're just like absolutely massive.
Have you ever been to Cape Town in South Africa?
I haven't, but I have seen so many amazing photos, and like especially from cyclists. Like there's like a big cycling event. There's like races and stuff in South Africa too that we watch.
We just had it.
Yeah,
it's the August Cycle Tour. It's the biggest one in the world.
Yeah,
30,000 people do our peninsula.
Yeah.
Anyway, I thought of you when I was doing research. I was like, there's gotta be bucket list.
Oh, absolutely. Like I had a friend do it a couple years ago, and it just looked absolutely incredible. And that's the way to see a place, in my opinion, is either like running or on a bike. Like you just see such a different perspective of it, and it's just like it's a flavor just to absorb and be there, and like I love it.
Our freeway that goes straight into the city is totally closed, and you can just, you're just cycling where there's normally like thousands of cars. Should we just crack on into a game?
Yes.
Okay, this game is called No Context. I'm gonna shoot you 2 options, and all you need to do is send me back one of them. No context given, and no explanation needed at all why you chose it. You got it?
I got it. Let's go.
Getting festive at the Calgary Stampede was solo trail run around the Glenmore Reservoir.
Solo trail run.
Emily Batty or Lizzie Deignan?
Lizzie Deignan, Queen of Roubaix, won that race like right after having a baby. Like absolutely. I know that was context, but I love Lizzie Deignan.
A Cinderella story or the Lizzie McGuire movie?
Lizzie McGuire movie.
Bieber or Swift?
Swift.
Chris Du or Rand Segal?
Rand Segal.
8 pixels or 20 pixels?
8 pixels.
Never too small or lessons in chemistry?
Lessons in chemistry.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
December 25th or May 10th?
May 10th.
Low code or no code?
Low code.
Notion or Trello?
Notion.
And lastly, earning 300K Canadian a year, but working 3 days a week, or earning $1 million Canadian a year, but working 6 days a week?
$1 million a year. I already work 6 or 7 days a week.
Brilliant. So, earlier this year, you dropped your debut course, Fast Forward Freelance. And, it's to help basically any freelancers with their first year, the ins and outs, all the obstacles that you kind of wish you knew before you started. So you got super transparent, shared everything. How has the response been?
It's been wonderful. Like the first cohort just wrapped up a couple weeks ago. I released the course, had registration open for a week, and then did eight live sessions over 4 weeks of just like office hours, chatting and talking and giving feedback. And the response was amazing. And it was so validating. Obviously, there was feedback and I have some things to improve for the next round. But overall, I think that it was received in the way that I intended it to be, which is such a wonderful feeling after having worked on something for like more than a year and putting so much time into it. To have someone else recognize that and resonate with it and feel like it's impacted their practice is just like the best feeling in the world.
You aren't just a designer. You're a good designer. You know you can be a great designer. But work is work is work is work. You started creating things when you were young. You didn't just want to create, you had to create. You know that place still exists, but you're not sure how to get back there. Work is work is work is work. You start dreaming beyond your daily to-dos. You start remembering that place of drive and ambition. You start looking for directions to take you there, but it seems so scary. But what if? Work is work is work is work. You take a leap, whether it's faith or fluke or a little bit of both. You give it a go on your own. You don't know how, but you know you have to. It's hard. It's harder than hard. You don't know if you can do it, but then you do. Work isn't just work anymore. Work is play and stress and joy and thrill and hard and easy and all at once. Work is work, but it's more now. It's drive, it's purpose, it's reward, it's full. I know you see it too. Let's fast forward together.
So I've got a question here from Alessia Sanazara.
Yes. Hi, Grace. This is Alicia. I was wondering, for people who are looking to create their own course, what was the hardest thing in creating Fast Forward Freelance? And was there anything actually easier than you anticipated?
Oh, gosh. I think the most difficult part was honestly just building it and getting it out, because I had the idea for this course like more than a year ago and essentially started working on writing it for 6 months before I actually launched it. And so that writing was quite easy and like that was quite fun and I really enjoyed it. But actually distilling that writing into videos and into the platform and building the platform myself, those were the things that were incredibly difficult. And especially, I think, if I could distill it into one thing, it was building the platform, producing the content on top of doing client work. That was the challenge. And like, there's so many little micro challenges within that as well. But I think actually just putting it out and getting it live and launching it and not tripping over myself that it wasn't perfect or it wasn't this like, there was still tweaks to make, because I think that I could have very well fallen into a trap of perfecting it to oblivion. But I'm really glad that I had the restraint to just say, like, this is good enough. I need to launch it and I can get feedback and then I can improve. That was probably like the most difficult part.
Amazing. I mean, it's never finished, right?
It's never finished. And that's like, how cool is that? Like that you get to launch something and then relaunch it.
You know, your course got a few parts, 3 hours of video. You talked about your 8 office hours that spanned 4 weeks. And you have a clonable Notion dashboard with the lead pipeline, the task management database, helpful admin resources. Also a written version. So I'm quite interested, you know, I'm about to embark on a course myself, and I know it's endless, you know, that you can add so much. You know, you can add an audio version if you wanted to. So in hindsight, if you had to rewind back to January, do you feel like these components, this package that you presented, was a solid offering, or was there anything you would change or add now?
I don't think that there is anything that I would change or add in terms of the building blocks of the course, like the core components. I'm really happy with those aspects of it. But I think it would have been nice just to have a few more like bonus features. Like all of those core components were great, but I also had like a bonus video section where I have like a proposal walkthrough and like the Notion dashboard walkthrough and like some other things like that. And there's been some really interesting conversation that's come up in the office hour sessions that have been really inspiring for what kind of other bonus content I want to create. Like one that I'm going to be including in the next round of the course is a breakdown of every single project I did in my first year of freelancing, how much it cost, what was the outcome, that kind of stuff, because those kind of like real world examples, like folks seem to really resonate with those. So I'm like, that's the kind of stuff that I'm like, okay, I can improve on this. But the core pieces I'm really happy with.
So it's interesting you put the constraints on just the written version, the Notion clonable, and now you're getting the feedback, and now you're just going to improve. I want to know, why do you cap the course into a cohort style, even though it's not live? Why not just try and earn passive income while you're cycling on the weekend?
Yeah, I think that this is something that I really thought about, and there was some parts of the course that I very intentionally left out from what other creators do. Those two things would be like perpetually open and some aspect of community. And the reason why I didn't include those things was because I want to give myself space and opportunity to not always be on. It's the reason that I love doing project-based work, is that I can work on something for 3 months and then I move on to something else. And then if I want to take a month-long break, I can plan that into my schedule. But having something be a perpetual commitment was something that I didn't feel like I could add on to my schedule with client work right now. So knowing that if I launch the course, it's going to be active work for like 6 weeks, and then I can take a break, and then I can do it again, and I can take a break. And that's kind of the attitude that I've had with it, is that it's not, for me, the course is not about making the most money possible. It's about putting out something that is very thoughtful, that is also fruitful, but is something that I am in control of and adds to my life and isn't a constant stressor. And so I find that like things like a Slack community or Discord server or things like that are something that has to be always maintained. It's a garden. You have to be constantly weeding it out and helping it thrive and sparking conversation and all of that kind of stuff, which was something I just frankly didn't have capacity for right now at this point in my life. So I was like very intentional that I wanted to do the course, but not have it like take over my client work.
A huge shout out to our season sponsor, Webflow, who allow us to build websites with the power of code without writing any. You can take control of a website's HTML code, CSS styles, and JavaScript animations, all within a stunning visual canvas. Webflow has also launched localization, an end-to-end solution for customizing your site for a worldwide audience. You can build with localized content directly in the designer. As you add locales, for example French, you can easily switch between them and preview how each site looks for each before publishing. It's great to know you can customize static pages and CMS content specifically for a language. Furthermore, you can add localized images and alt text. You can show or hide certain elements, and you can even adjust typography and styles per locale to accommodate for different length headlines, fonts, and more. Webflow is totally free to get going, and you only start paying when you need to go live. Head over to webflow.com for your next website build. So, you listen to the MDS episode and he touched on how you can take breaks and shut it off with a shift nudge course. One thing you haven't touched on is this narrative where you can hype up a relaunch or open again. If you've got a course that's always for sale, it's just like, hey guys, buy it. It gets a little bit, it's like very diluted in your offering, but you're like, we're opening it up spring 2024. And also, by the way, spring is my winter. I get so confused. It's got to have a month in it. Do you want to touch on the tech stack? I'm fascinated why some creators and freelancers who are so stacked with client work don't just use something like Teachable.
Yeah.
And then we're like, cool. But here we are building our own course management system.
Yeah, building it from scratch.
So
there's two parts. Maybe I'll cover like the stack first and why I chose to do it the way that I did. So Fast Forward Freelance is built using Webflow for the site hosting, the content hosting, things like that. I'm using MemberStack to gate content and manage memberships through their paid integration with Stripe. I obviously have Notion for like the Notion dashboard that's included. I am using ConvertKit for emails, and then Zapier kind of like to glue everything together. And then also Vimeo for video hosting. So there's like a lot of tools in play. And even like in producing the course, I was using things like Tela and Veed and like just like lots of different tools to get it off the ground.
Veed, eh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Veed, I used Veed for their like AI eye contact tool, which is like a little bit funky and I was not sure about, but it actually made a massive difference. Yeah, I think the reason why I decided to build something fully custom instead of using a platform like Teachable or Kajabi or like one of the other main ones is that I, as a designer, really want to have control. And I want the experience that I build to be something that's beautiful and memorable and reflective of my taste and skill set. So that was part of it of like, I can't bring myself to use a pre-built platform just because frankly, most of them are not very pleasant to look at. And the second point of that was that I wanted to use Fast Forward Freelance as a vehicle to further my skill set as a designer for my client work. So I haven't used MemberStack in about 4 years. So that was an opportunity for me to refresh myself on how to use MemberStack, all the different capabilities, how to set things up. And I'm about to send a quote for a project to use MemberStack for something else for a client. So I feel like that's like been a really nice complementary thing to help me like force myself to learn. And yeah, but mostly like I found that when I was thinking about like how am I going to build this, I build incredible things for clients all the time. And I've never built something for myself beyond a portfolio site. So like I have all the skill sets, I have all the tools, I can do it. Like why am I not doing it? That was kind of like the push for it.
It's fascinating. You know, this is going to resonate with thousands of people because you'd rather build it yourself and spend probably like $300 a month on that stack with that Vimeo.
Oh, it's expensive.
And like, yeah, versus $79 probably for that out the box Teachable. But you know what? Good for you. It's like you learn something new. You have full control. I don't love it when a platform just changes things. Like, for example, when Gumroad just upped the pricing from 3 to 10%. You know, it's just like that. It's like it's not in your control. You know, you're directly in there with Stripe and you've got all the control with your membership with MemberStack. Do you feel like you have more to offer in other types of courses for freelancers? Because I know this is, you know, we're talking about year one. We're talking about getting started, everything you learn. But now you're in, I think, year 4 now.
Yeah.
And, you know, revenue going up, you're dealing with bigger clients, probably NDAs and so on. There's a lot of stuff you can share at this level.
I think that it's something that's always kind of in the back of my mind of when I feel like I'm moving on to the next thing, how can I share the knowledge of what I was previously doing? And that's kind of like where Fast Forward Freelance came from was I've had 3 years of freelancing on my own as a solo designer. And in January of this year, I incorporated my business. I'm taking on larger projects. I'm working with more collaborators. So I'm kind of stepping out of that like initial freelance zone. And I've had time to reflect on what I would have done differently, how I would have set that up if I were to start again. But I am kind of like stepping into this new stage. So it's kind of like, as I'm stepping up, how can I like help people to come to the level that I was previously working at? So I think that that's something that I'd like to take with me throughout, frankly, like my whole career is how can I teach as I go once I feel like I have a really good handle on something. So the first iteration of that, obviously Fast Forward Freelance, but I think about other courses maybe for designers, but more so like I'm really curious about, and I've had this idea for a while about a course for marketing directors and CMOs and folks like that who are undertaking website projects, but don't really know how to go about it, like who to hire, who they should work with, things like that. And like in any marketing director's life, they're maybe going to undertake a handful of website projects, maybe 2 or 3, maybe if they're a young marketing exec, like they've never done a website before, but I've done 100 of them. And I know what goes right, what goes wrong, like how clients can come best prepared, how they can make the most of a situation of working with a designer or an agency. And so that's kind of like the things that I think about is maybe not for other freelancers, but like how can I share my knowledge with other folks that I work with? And that like marketing piece has been something I'm really curious about.
You've mentioned in the past also like you've been working towards, hopefully maybe starting a family one day. And you can see how if you have a couple of courses lying there, you can take on less clients. And it's kind of seems like your body language is kind of, you're curious about this, dude. Like, yeah, this course it is doing great. Let's see what else we can do.
Yeah, it's something that I very intentionally cultivated. I have very intentionally started exploring products so that I can complement my client work if I do want to take 6 months to a year off. So I think that it's something that like I thought about for a really long time before I actually did it. And finally, like it feels like the pieces are falling into place of, okay, like this is the plan that I've had for quite a long time. I'm taking action to like produce other things that can bring me income if I do take a break. And so it's like a nice thing to have something to work towards and like actually see that through.
Yo, this is McAlister, designer and creator of many things. Don't forget to hit subscribe because I'll be chatting with Rob soon about design and the universe and all kinds of other stuff on an upcoming episode of the Yo podcast. See you soon.
It must feel good as well because you had this long-term vision, and like this is a chess piece that's just got into place, and it's like cool, things are actually going to plan.
Yeah, I mean you can't plan everything, but
no, you can't. But I think you're doing a great job. So I look forward to seeing how the course is done in your Twitter annual reports at the end of the year,
yes.
Your little earnings report. So for people that don't know, Grace shares a beautifully designed report of her year, her client's situation, where the leads came from, how many failed leads, which is really interesting. How many projects were landed, was it through which platforms? There's also the Twitter, the LinkedIn. This is very fascinating. So I'm interested, Grace, do you feel that these annual reports have led to future work? Do you feel like there's a monetary value you could put on making that share on Twitter on that one day of the year?
Interesting. I think yes, in terms of general visibility. I think that a lot of my work comes from me being very visible online. And so I don't know that there is like a direct connection between like, oh, somebody saw my year-end report and then they reached out to work with me. But I do think it is a signal that like I'm actively taking on work. I'm doing work at a very high level. And so it's not necessarily they're like, oh, like Grace is really successful, we want to work with her. It's just like one more point of visibility and one more thing to show like I'm analytical and I am actively doing work and I have done like a very large breadth of work. So it's just like I think something like that is more so about the secondary signals that it sends rather than the like blatant stats that are shared.
When I look at it from the outside, I see you champion Webflow. They are so proud of you. And then when you share that report, I've seen that team, they start sharing your report as well. And anyone who's interested in Webflow starts following the platform, all of a sudden the core team is like, hey, this is Grace. She's the freelance rock star. It's only a good thing.
Who do you follow in the Webflow community? Probably thousands of people, but the person who comes to mind most recently is Grace Walker. She builds in public, elevates a lot of people in the no-code space, and has just been a wonderful person to follow.
AJ from Card, the website builder, he started to share these reports at the end of it, each month, the monthly earnings. And it got to a place where he felt it was crossing the line between being helpful and boastful. Mm-hmm. Do you feel if you hit north of 1 million Canadian, you're still going to start sharing these reports?
I don't know. I mean, that's not a problem that I currently have. I would love to have that problem, but yeah, that would be a wonderful problem to have. I think that so sharing income online is something that I've really grappled with because in the 2022 report, I didn't share income, but this year I shared like the average project value and then the number of projects I did, which you could extrapolate then like how much I earned in a year. And so I think there's a lot of perspectives online, and I've received this feedback myself of sharing income feeling like, oh, they're a snake oil salesman. Like they're only sharing this because they have something to push. And yes, I did. I shared my income because I was about to launch a freelancing course. And I did so because it's a validation of I actually know what I'm doing. I'm not someone who's created a course because they need to make money. I'm someone who's created a course on freelancing because I actually have done it and I've done it well, and other people have recognized that. And I want to share that with folks. So I think that sharing your income online, especially like in that context, like not everyone's going to like it. There's going to be folks who are like, that's not true or whatever. And
that's impossible.
It's impossible. But I think also from the flip side of that, as a young designer, I saw people sharing how much they were earning with freelancing, and that was what pushed me to freelance. And I think that, like, yes, you can look at peers and you can say, oh, whatever, like pick it apart. But there's probably like a young designer who's exactly like me, who is in the same position that I was 4 years ago and is seeing the potential that they could reach. And that's really inspiring for them. That was inspiring for me. And so that's kind of like the core of why I think those metrics are really valuable to share, and why I admire other people who share them, is that it's showing you what you can do. And I feel like it's like, that's not the ceiling. Like there is no ceiling. So you could just like continue to share and things like that. But I think that it does turn a little bit of a corner when you're sharing like income that's been generated from helping other people generate income versus like client work. So I'll probably like separate those into like how much I earn from client work versus how much products. But I'm still not 100%. It made me very uncomfortable to share it last year, but I got some really great feedback about it.
Good stuff. I mean, you've literally covered my next question. Like, was it a coincidence that you launched a course just after sharing a freelance report?
No, absolutely
Wonderful.
not.
Good for you. Just on your point there about what's possible online, I started my site One Page Love in 2008, and I was doing freelance, and I had no idea that I would work on it full time. It's just like, it's impossible. It's like a design inspiration. Like, what are you going to do? Get a reference and get out of there.
Yeah.
It's like if people just scrolling and then like saving screenshots. But, I started to read those stories. Hey, there's, what do you mean that back then, like Zen Garden and CSS Mania, and I was like, what do you mean that ad block, you're charging that much and you have that many people coming to your site? So anyway, then added more value, got busy with the community, built up the following, site grew. So I basically work on that full time, just working on projects and now the podcast. And I also feel like I don't share that number. Like I don't share how much I earn from the site. And I feel like it's a bit of a pity sometimes, because there's other people out there with like these side projects that are like probably not putting in time in them because they're like, there's no ways they can do it. One-page websites, WordPress gallery, like there's no ways it could be making, six figures, but it can. It's like, you just got to keep going. So yeah, anyway, I'm just saying I'm a fan. Well done. I'll probably cut out that whole segment. So do you want to break into a second intermission?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay, this intermission is called Overrated, Underrated. I'm going to give you a topic, a brand, a person, and you just need a quick fire back if you feel like it's overrated, underrated, or properly rated. If you feel like it's got sort of an even standing in the public eye. You got it.
Okay.
Unlimited design subscription services.
Overrated.
Short naps during office hours.
Underrated.
In real life conferences.
Properly rated.
Getting a degree.
Properly rated.
Pour over coffee.
Properly rated.
Framer.
Overrated.
Design systems.
Properly rated.
Photoshop.
Overrated. Burn it to the ground.
Ginger beef.
Underrated.
Passive income.
Overrated.
I knew you'd say that. Working in public.
Underrated.
Rodeos.
Underrated.
Design inspiration galleries.
Properly rated.
And lastly, the minimalism movement.
Overrated.
Yeah, so there's no question, judging by your photography and style online, you have an appreciation for minimal design. Would you call yourself a minimalist or an essentialist?
I think essentialist. I think that I'm not minimizing my life for the sake of having as few things as possible. I think that I am really thoughtful about the things that I do have and do use and do make space and time and energy for, that they are valuable. So I think maybe that would fall more in line with essentialism versus minimalism. But frankly, I think that it's a little bit of just semantics of different words for similar movements, but you could pick them apart, I imagine, in multiple different ways.
So, confession, do you Photoshop out all the blemishes in your living area when you share the photos online?
Oh gosh, I think I have photoshopped out like a plug once that I saw in a photo, and I was like, oh, that's like atrocious. I can't post that. But for the most part, like I'm just snapping things on my Instagram. The thing that I do always, because it just brings me joy, is that I straighten every single image that I take of my house. That I do share online, because I feel like that is what gives something, rather than like any kind of editing or anything else. It's just like, if it's a straight image, if your horizontals are horizontal, if your verticals are vertical, like that's tasty. I like that. Satisfying. So that's, I think, like the majority of what I do.
So my wife told me this, she's got such a great interior designer, and she taught me this little rule about spacing against a wall. I always put something right against the wall. And she's like, no.
Yeah.
Like, no. Got to pull it away from the wall,
Bang
like
it
just
out.
evenly, and just like let that breathe against the side. And honestly, then all of a sudden I could see it everywhere. Just transitioning quick to freelance. I thought we could just do a fun little interactive exercise really quick, 2-3 minutes. We don't have to go deep. We can do it on a broad level. You're a big fan of minimal design. Other people would like to get in your head. How does Grace go about and think about designing? So let's just have a hypothetical case study. There's a lovely deli in Calgary. You love the owners, this couple, and they said, Grace, we would love you to please create us a clean, minimal one-page website. What is the process you'd go about after they've given the green, or you've given the green light? You'd love to work with them. What is the very next thing you do, and into the steps of actually delivering that beautiful final design in Figma?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting call out on minimal design in general, because while I think that my life and my like personality and home are quite minimal, it's not necessarily something that I bring into my work. It's kind of like a function of leaving space to do things in work and in design that are more colorful and more playful. And so I wouldn't necessarily like qualify my design work as minimal, but if I were in this scenario, I think that the first thing that I would do would be to read their Google reviews. So
Wow.
we're in this project, we're going forward, we're going to build a site for this deli. The very first thing that I would do, that I do with any service-based client, is read their Google reviews. I want to know what other people are saying about them. I want to know what people are singing their praises about. What details did someone pick up on that made them really, really enjoy this experience, and where are they maybe not delivering the way that they want. And so that, I think, would be like my first instinct. And then from there, I would probably dive into my standard practice, which starts with a kickoff meeting, a discovery call, to figure out like what is their ideal state. What does success look like for them? What are they worried about in this project? This kind of like big overarching questions around who do they want to be? And then using that as inspiration to then dive into the look and feel. Like, do they already have a brand? Do they already have a logo? Is that something that we're creating from scratch? And if it is, trying to dive into their ideal state in combination with the in-person experience to figure out like what are the special aspects of them as a company, as a deli, as like going into their store, like what does it feel like? And using that as inspiration for the visuals and the design. I feel like I really love working on projects that have a lot of detail and complexity to them. So like I feel like you can find that in any project that you do, whether that's like a deli or a tech company or like an industrial service or whatever. There's always details to latch onto, and those details I think are like the most inspiring thing in a project. So yeah, I would figure out what their ideal future state looks like. I would figure out what other people are saying about them. I would use that to inspire the design. Functionally, what that would look like would be sketching out wireframes. I have a bunch of them on my wall beside me for a project right now. And then I would typically just like dive right into high fidelity on screen. Usually I provide clients 2 options based on my best recommendations, their current state, their ideal state. One of them is usually closer to where they currently are. One of them is a farther step away so that they can see this potential evolution.
Wow.
And once we're aligned on that, build it, train them, launch it, get it live. so that they can get
Amazing.
more good Google reviews.
Bravo. So just lean in quick. Let's just like zoom in on design inspiration. Do you feel like a hunt for other delis can kind of throw you off the direction that you've actually customized now, because you've gone into the Google reviews, you know exactly what you want, you've spoken to the owner. It's like, it's almost a distraction when you've gone that detailed.
Yeah, I think with any project that I do, I want to know what competitors are doing so that we can either align someone with an industry or differentiate them from their peers. And that's kind of like, I think the function of looking at parallel references when you are doing design work is either like, do you want to feel like you belong to this group, or do you want to feel like you are different from this group? And so that's kind of like an essential step to figure out, okay, like what are other people doing? There's obviously some essential elements to that kind of website, like a menu and like a takeout order piece. And like there's pieces that you need to include. And so you can align yourself with those. But in general, like whether it's for a deli or anyone else, I want to see what is standard, what we can do to break that standard. And is breaking those standards going to create a website that doesn't feel like it's in that industry? Because maybe then that's going too far. But yeah, I don't think that I very rarely will go to another site and think, gosh, this is exactly what I need. I'm gonna just like repurpose this into my own thing. It's like taking little bits and pieces from all over the place and fitting them into what you need to accomplish.
That's a fantastic answer. Honestly, I'll cut this out as well, but it's better than Dan Petty's version of that.
What did he say?
Anyway, but don't tell him that. Okay. So we've got a question here from Jenna from Holy Moly Creative Studio.
Oh, hi, Jenna.
Hey, Grace, from me and Millie. My question for you is, have you ever felt like you've lost control of a project? And if so, what did you do to get it back on track? And if not, what is your top piece of advice to avoid that ever happening?
Yeah, all the time. Pretty much every single project that I do, there's a point where I can foresee it running away and just like disappearing into the forest. So I think that it's always something that's like a potential in a project of like, there are always ingredients for something to go wrong. And you need to kind of be like this sheepdog, just like constantly making sure that the herd is in line. But the thing is that I do to mitigate that potential of having a project collapse or whatever, or go astray, is really just like lots of open communication. I like to set up weekly syncs with a client throughout our project duration so that every single week I know that I'm going to talk to this client, and we can have face-to-face time to have conversation. I think that I've seen a lot more movement lately for remote only services where like there's no meetings, you're not talking to someone, everything's on Slack, which I think is great. And I use Slack constantly. But my general working structure is that I have a weekly sync. The day before that weekly sync, I send all of the deliverables for the week in a Loom video and a Slack message so that we can have our meeting and it's only reserved for conversation. And the purpose of that is obviously, yes, to get feedback on a project, but also to get a sense talking to someone how they feel about the work. Are they excited about it? Are they worried about it? If they are worried about it, what are they worried about? And actually like asking that question. I had a really great client a couple years ago who ended every meeting. They were a facilitator, so this was like very natural for them. I feel like I like adopted it a little bit and try to put it into practice sometimes. But at the end of every meeting, they asked that question. They said, like, what are we excited about and what are we worried about? And that was a really nice tone to set in the work, because you were speaking about your fears. And if there was something that was on a client's mind where they were concerned about a project getting out of hand, or they weren't happy with the work, or they were worried about a particular functionality, instead of ignoring it and saying like, oh, that's fine, like we're just going to continue to do good things, everything's positive, you're giving it space and airing it, and then it becomes so much less scary. Because if that's the worry, you can address it. But you can't address something that you don't know about. So I think that really just like open communication. And if there is a tension in a project or it is starting to unravel, reflecting on what I have done to contribute to that situation. I think that's like my first instinct always, is that if something's going wrong in a project, I'm probably partly to blame. So what have I done to contribute to that? What has the client done to contribute to that? Can it be fixed? And do I want it to be fixed? And sometimes the outcome that has come out of that is like, I'm going to do absolutely everything within my power, new designs, working all weekend. Like, I'm going to put all of my effort into remedying this situation to get us back on track. Or the client doesn't want to fix it, I don't want to fix it, and we part ways. And that's fine too.
Yeah, that's healthy. I mean, you're never going to get anywhere unless two people want to actually get along and just get it over the line.
Yeah.
So a few years ago, I found myself in quite an unhealthy place online where I was on my Twitter and I was looking at everyone I was following, and it was majority were guys.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I didn't honestly understand how I got there. And I went to a few female friends and I asked, like, hey, who's doing good stuff? Who should I be following? Like, I got to break this. And your name was honestly like a common suggestion out of all the people. And I wanted to know, why do you think women suggest you?
What a question. Wow. It's I think that's a difficult question for me to answer because I can only see myself from my own perspective. But I was speaking with a friend a couple weeks ago who is a designer who's like has a very successful studio. And we were talking about the course, and she mentioned that she was chatting about me to someone else, and they were talking about how they felt like I was just like a kind guiding voice. And that really resonated with me and was really validating in that I want to show up as someone online who is very helpful, but is going to be kind in the process and going to be encouraging. And I think that spirit is like what I would want to resonate with. Like, that's who I like to follow, is someone who's maybe not like, who's offering helpful suggestions, who's offering frameworks to improve, without being lecturing or diminishing or any kind of thing that makes you feel bad about yourself. I think that there is like, everyone has so much potential, and I see like my friends and like young designers, and I'm just like, you are so cool, and I just want you to know how cool you are and how cool your work is. And like, that confidence, I think, is really powerful. So I can't necessarily say like why other people resonate with my content, but I try to show up as someone that I would want to look up to. And I think that maybe that's part of it. And it's something that I'm always trying to work on. So
excellent answer. I really put you on the spot there, but it's a two-part question, and
okay.
I set it up beautifully. So a little bit deeper is that, where do we draw the line at wanting someone else's success? Okay. Seeing Grace online, wanting that success and using that to grow. Okay. So you see that, and I want to grow there. Okay. But where do we draw the line at wanting someone else's success and deciding it's time to actually create our own path?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question, and something I've been thinking a lot about lately is that you don't necessarily need to take everyone's life and their lessons and their advice exactly as they say it. You can see someone's success, and you can see what they're putting out into the world and how they see things and their advice and their frameworks and things like that, and apply it to yourself, because there is no one else who's doing the exact same thing as me, who has the exact same personal interests. And I don't have the same goals as my friends. They don't have the same goals as me, but there are threads in what we are both doing that we can learn from each other. And so I might see someone else doing something really exceptional, and I might pick up on that and think, oh, I can apply that in a different way to what I'm doing. And I think really like looking at someone else's success should never be, I need to do exactly that in order to succeed. It's taking the spirit of what they've done and why they were successful and applying that to your own situation. So I think for me, like, that came into practice with Fast Forward Freelance, of knowing of seeing other people launch courses and launch products and seeing them do it once and then do it again, and do it again, and do it again, and just like improve things. And I didn't feel in any way that I had to copy their strategy exactly, and that, oh, I had to do a podcast, or I had to have a community, or I had to have this. It wasn't a recipe for success, but it was an inspiration. It was saying like, oh, they launched something and it didn't really go well the first time, but then they did it again. And I can do that too. So it's not necessarily like taking the exact formula for what they did. It's seeing their approach to how they did something and then applying that to your own situation.
One wonderful answer. Grace, a lot of people don't know, but I launched a site about 20 years ago called The Modern Optimist, and it was a positive news site. And no one actually really wants to follow positive news, just in case anyone's thinking about that idea. People just want to hear disaster. But I've been on a permanent hunt online for positivity and optimism. And I found you online, and I'm super grateful because of it. Grace,
I'm so glad.
Thank you for contributing what you do online. Where can the Yo podcast listeners follow you?
I am always on Twitter, on X, at Grace on Grid, and usually updating my website at gracewalker.ca. You can also find the course at fastforwardfreelance.com, and I'm very online, so I'm hard to miss.
Thanks for coming on the show, Grace.
Thanks so much, Rob.
Am I super red here?
You just turned a little bit more red than you previously were.
I went for a run earlier, and I swear I haven't cooled down yet.
It's like it takes a while to. Yeah, I know that feeling.
Man. It's such a rookie move. Anyway, post production, there's LUTs for that, and like,
Give yourself a nice beauty filter.
Wow. Okay, so edit. If you hear a baby crying, my little boy is 9 months old. So
that's awesome.
just carry on rolling.
That's all good.
And then